doing here? What the hell is going on?
I was sent to get you for a reason.
Open the door! No!
There's a flower on the pillows, a flower in the bathroom. Like, we're important.
The only chance we have is if all three of us go crazy on this guy.
Who is that? Maybe she can help us.
We're here! Help us! We're in here!
Don't worry. He's not allowed to touch you. He knows what you're here for. He listens to me.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to episode 35 of the DNA Film Wars podcast. Today we are talking about Split from director M. Night Shyamalan, from writer
M. Night Shyamalan,
starring James McAvoy, Anya Taylor-Joy.
Anya Taylor-Joy.
Taylor-Joy.
I hate you.
Lu Richardson, Jessica Sula, and Betty Buckley. Betty Buckley.
What a name.
So, this is our second review in the Split Unbreakable Glass trilogy, whatever
M. Night
it's called.
Shyamalan, quote-unquote, glass trilogy, or superhero trilogy.
Yeah, whatever it is.
Whatever you want to call it.
This is, I'll go ahead and say it right now, the best entry in the series, right here.
Most definitely.
Which we have already seen Glass. But,
That's what it is.
yeah, we'll talk about that later. So, I guess we'll just go ahead and do like we've done.
Well, let's go with our initial thoughts real quick. What do you think of this movie?
Initial thoughts?
I guess you already did that, kind of, but
Yeah.
it's definitely the best entry
Best one in the series.
trilogy.
I think this movie, the reason is because, I didn't really care for the slow plotting, not very good character study of the first one, of Unbreakable. This is a straight up thriller / horror movie, and I think it works really well as that. It's, the first time you watch it, I think it's really suspenseful, and I think that Shyamalan did a really good job in that aspect. So,
And, of course, he had his surprise twist at the end that just blew everyone away.
yeah, it's like, which I had to, when I had read up what was going to happen at the end of this, and I was like, well, I've never watched Unbreakable, so that's when I went back and watched Unbreakable. So I guess that was the first time I watched Unbreakable, which was in 2016. So I wasn't that young of a teenager. I was like 18. No, I can't remember. Anyway, so what do you think?
It's a really good movie. I really like this movie a lot. I think it's got, not even arguably, 100% the best performance in the entire trilogy.
Yeah.
Probably out of any of M. Night Shyamalan's films, honestly.
Yeah.
And it's a really intriguing story, I think. I really like it.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and start. So, what I really appreciate this movie is it gets right to the point. We have about, 5 minutes.
Maybe.
And Anya Taylor-Joy with her friends, with her dad.
Our quote-unquote friends.
Her friend, yeah, quote-unquote friends with one of her quote-unquote friends' dad. And,
It's implied that she was not really wanted there.
yeah.
That
Or she didn't want to be
forced
there.
to be invited.
Yeah.
To this girl's party
Which,
or whatever.
my only logic complaint would be why, if she doesn't want to go, why did she go? But I guess the answer to that would be to get away from her uncle. So I'll roll with it. But yeah, so then they go out to the parking lot.
Her friend's dad,
Dennis, the personality known as Dennis,
played by James McAvoy, obviously.
James McAvoy, I guess knocks her dad out and
steals his car.
sprays something in their face that knocks them out, and steals the car and kidnaps them. So he takes them to this dark place. We don't know where it's at, and he
Has locked him in a room.
locked them in a room, and basically
That's how our movie begins.
that's how the movie begins. And then they we start. I think we have somewhere in this area we have our first flashback to what's the character's name?
Who's?
Anya Taylor-Joy.
Casey.
Casey's childhood, where we flash back and forth between the present and this hunting trip she went on with her dad and her uncle, and
Kind of starts off, seems innocent. They're
Yeah.
just on a hunting
they're
trip.
on a hunting trip. But anyway, we go back
which
to
we'll find out later, but we'll talk
It was
about it in
not.
a minute.
Yeah, so then we go back, and Dennis comes in and he tries to take one of the girls, and what's her name?
Casey.
God, I tried to say Claire. Casey starts with a C. Casey tells her to pee herself, and she does, and we learn that Dennis is very OCD, but he likes to have girls dance naked in front of him. But and that happens, all that, and we also somewhere pretty soon get the first scene with the counselor, therapist, or whatever. The therapist plays a very big role in this movie. Like coming back to this movie for only the second time, I'd forgotten how much she was in this movie, and we find
She's
that
pretty good.
she the personality known as Barry,
Who is a fashion designer.
yeah, he's like the lead supposed to be the lead personality, the one that has the light the most of the time. But the therapist, I think, already in this first scene suspects that it's not really Barry, it's Dennis. But then we go back to the house because someone from the Horde, which they call him at the end of the Horde, someone from the group of personalities has emailed her in the middle of the night and
said they needed to talk to her.
And every time, I guess by the time they get around to the appointment, Dennis has taken the light back over. But we go back to the house, and this is the first scene where we see Patricia. And the girls think that they might get out because they see a woman walking around outside. Well, the door opens, lo and behold, it's James McAvoy dressed like a woman. And we really this is the first time I think we really get to see James McAvoy show off his range as an actor playing this.
It's really like it's only really like the second personality that we see of his. Or that we
hear him arguing with himself, like all Psycho style.
It's like him arguing with Dennis, Patricia arguing with Dennis, and it's like, yeah, you know, very reminiscent of Psycho of him arguing with his mother, but which you come to find out is the same person.
Yeah,
but it's really great, and you're right. It really does. It's where we really start to see James McAvoy like oh my gosh, this man is a very talented actor, and
he's also in this character. This character is a very disturbed man. So and she tells him that he's not allowed to hurt you, but there's something ominous coming. We get that feeling.
Yeah, you're being saved for something special.
You're being saved for something special. And then, so, we get through all this. We get to meet Hedwig here pretty shortly, and he's like a 9-year-old personality living inside.
He's my favorite. He's my favorite.
He's my favorite personality, but he's like the one that has. He's the one that is now controlling the light, which is like, you know,
controlling who gets to be in the light and who doesn't. Yeah. I guess.
And so he's the one that's allowed Patricia and Dennis to take over, even though they've been banned from the light because they're twisted and because of their belief in the beast. But Patricia has conned Hedwig into thinking that, or has told him that he'll be rewarded if he lets them have the light and lets the beast come. So they do this whole thing, and Hedwig starts to kind of develop a crush
on Casey
and everything.
And so Casey kind of plays into it, obviously.
Casey kind of plays into it to try to help him get out. So then we have our first escape attempt where they figure out that the ceiling.
They kind of trick the personality of Hedwig out of some information.
Yeah.
And find out that there's a vent above the bed in the room. So they take down some of the Jesus Christ, the drywall. Jesus Christ is the word I was trying to look to take down the drywall from the ceiling and sneak through this vent. And obviously
one girl gets out. And she gets out, and then she goes into the hallway, and then she's stupid. She goes and
starts running.
She goes and hides in the locker.
A metal locker, and she breathes so loud, you could have heard it from a mile away.
And then he's he finds her, and he's like, please step out.
Step out of the locker.
You got your blouse so dirty.
And then he makes her take it off.
Yeah. And then he locks her in a closet by herself. So then we cut back. We're cutting back and forth to the therapist and to this.
We're getting some good scenes with her.
The one scene that kind of bugged me is dialogue. The dialogue in this movie is not award-winning. I'll say that.
M. Night Shyamalan has never been known for the best dialogue.
And there's this one scene that's really bad where
between M. Night Shyamalan and then the therapist,
she's like, she goes on this big long spiel about the
Hooters.
hot wings that he ordered.
Hooters hot wings.
And he's like, "What fast food establishment did you con it?" I don't know what she says. She uses a bunch of big words. And it's bad, but it's kind of awkward. But in this scene, she's already had a second meeting with Barry, and in this scene, she
quote unquote Dennis. Yeah,
in this scene, she I think there's trash spilled outside, and she says on the camera that he walked through it, and she determines he walked through that to try to convince her that he doesn't have OCD. So she's like, okay, well, it is Dennis.
Well, earlier in that scene before he leaves, she believes that she's speaking with Dennis, and she calls him out on it. She's like, I don't believe that you're Barry. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, by the way that you've moved this candy dish next to you 3 times. She's like, I'm aware that Dennis has severe OCD. She said, I believe I'm talking to Dennis. And he never admits it. He's like, no way, I'm Barry or whatever. And then she obviously had this trash spilled outside or whatever, and so he walks right through it. But
she's like, that's a deliberate act because any normal person
would have walked around it.
So she reverse logics her way into convincing herself it's Dennis. So then we have another escape attempt where the
next girl,
Patricia, takes them out of the room for some lunch, and the remaining girl that's not Casey, makes a run for the door, and
she tries to hit Patricia over the head with a chair.
Yeah, and anyway, Patricia follows her. Like, Casey tries to talk her out of it, but she doesn't listen. Casey does shove the table in front of Patricia to slow her down. But Patricia gets around her, and she goes and she threatens the girl at knife point and takes her back to a separate closet, and locks her in a separate closet by herself.
And then Casey is taken back to the original room.
And she's taken back to the original room. So
but we have another interaction with Hedwig that's intriguing and fun.
This is where he kisses her?
Yeah, he kisses her. He's like, can I kiss you?
Can I kiss you? Etc.
And then they kiss, and he's like, you might be pregnant now. He's my favorite character.
And anyway, so then we have a third interaction with the therapist and the Barry. And this is where Dennis finally admits that he is Dennis. And so the therapist feels like she's making progress. And so then Dennis leaves, and he goes back, and the therapist decides that she's going to go visit him where he lives.
Yeah, she's decided that something seems off, something doesn't seem right, and that's why she decides to go visit Kevin.
Yeah, Kevin Windlecrumb. And during this scene, she meets with him, and it's going good, and then she asks to go see the bathroom. She puts in the door, she puts some paper in the door so that you can open it, even if he locks it. By this point...
And she's also written a note down before...
Well, no, this is a little bit later.
Is it?
Yeah. See, at this point, the girls are trying to escape, and obviously the therapist opens the door and finds one of the girls in the room. I think she's passed out. I think she's being drugged at this point or something. And so anyway, the therapist he takes the therapist and drags her, puts some chloroform in her face or something, and while he goes and meets the Beast, she wakes up and she scribbles a note.
Say the name Kevin Windlecrumb.
Say the name Kevin Windlecrumb, and then he comes back and he snaps her spine, and then he goes.
And also during this time interjected, we have a scene with Casey and Hedwig where earlier in the scene he's explaining to her that he has a window, and she believes it's a real window and a way to escape, and ends up going to Hedwig's room in this underground area, which we come to find out is underground. His room, and he has a drawing of a window, and she gets upset with him, and.
So then he shows her a radio, and she tries to contact someone on the radio, but they think that she's playing a joke on him or something, so they don't listen to her. And then...
Which we also haven't talked about, the flashbacks that are occurring throughout this entire film. We have a flashback, a second flashback with this hunting scene with her dad and her in a tent, and her uncle is not in the scene. Where they're connecting over, killing a deer. And
it's implied that her dad's a really good dad.
And then the next scene that we have that flashbacks that it's implied that her uncle sexually assaulted her.
Yeah, her dad
or possibly raped her.
Her uncle, is heavily implied that it didn't show it, thank God, but that her uncle sexually assaulted her. And then she comes back later and she grabs a shotgun. Well, I don't know, it might be the same scene. And she grabs the shotgun.
Yeah, it's the same scene. She grabs a shotgun and points at him.
But he grabs it and she doesn't shoot him. Then later...
We also have a scene where we get some explanation as to why Kevin is this way. We have a scene where his mother is trying to hit him with a hanger underneath his bed.
Yeah. And that's why Dennis was born, because his mother was less abusive if the house was perfectly spotless, and so that's why he's OCD. We get a scene again later where we learn that Casey's dad died when she was a young age, not long after that hunting trip, of a heart attack. And so now her uncle has custody of her. And
obviously, that's not a good situation.
That's not a good situation, obviously. And so, And of course, this sets up the ending. So anyway, we get to the ending,
and
like I
Casey,
said, I really like the movie up to this point.
It's really, really good.
The acting by James McAvoy has been great. Everybody's been good at acting. I think that, like I said, the tension is being built up really well. I've liked the first two acts of this movie a lot. Like, I mean, much more than I would expect from a Shyamalan movie, honestly.
But the best scene in the entire film, I think, is yet to come. We haven't talked about it yet.
And this is a rebound. I will say this is a good like Shyamalan has been coming off a string of bad movies. I think
he kind of started getting on the upswing with that movie that he did, The Visit.
Yeah, I'd heard that The Visit was all right, much better than The Last Airbender and After Earth, which were terrible, terrible movies. I can't believe his career survived those movies, honestly. But anyway, so he somehow conned Universal into giving him money for this movie, and it turned out all right. And
we start this, we're getting this third act, and Casey finds a way to escape.
Yeah.
And she makes it up to this room, that's pretty much on the surface level.
Well, she escapes because she got the key from the from like the coat rack or something.
Yeah.
And then she kind of got locked in that room she had that encounter she got in that room the kitchen where the therapist had left the door
which is on pretty much the ground level of the building that they're in or whatever.
And she gets out of that, and she runs. Of course, she runs into the beast.
Well, originally before she runs into the beast, obviously we have this scene after she's escaped. She gets up to like we said, this ground level where the therapist she finds has been killed, and the beast is missing, and she finds the note, say Kevin Wendell Crumb, and then James McAvoy's character I don't know who he is at the time. I think he's Dennis at first when he first walks in, and she starts saying the name Kevin.
No, he's the Beast by this point.
He hasn't become the Beast yet, has he?
Yeah,
when she says Kevin Wendell Crumb.
Yeah, he's become the Beast because he's killed the therapist by that point as the Beast, and he's the Beast when he walks in, and she gets the shotgun.
Well, she said she sees this note, and she says the name Kevin Wendell Crumb, which forces Kevin to come out, his personality to come out, and
then he tells her where the shotgun is.
Kill me. That way I can't hurt anybody anymore, and tells her where the shotgun is and the shotgun shells. But then this is the best scene of the entire movie, and he just starts ciphering through all of his personalities that he has that show up at least in this film.
Yeah.
And it's incredible.
It's great.
It's incredible acting. He's
acting.
so talented.
Anyway, so then we get to this chase scene where she runs right down the hallway where the first girl that escaped was running, and he catches her by the leg and bites into her leg.
Yeah.
And then she kicks him off.
And then is able to run farther.
Yeah, and
kind of locks herself in this cage.
Well, she shoots at him first, I think. And then she locked herself in the cage. And then it turns out the bullets didn't kill him, and I think she runs out of bullets.
Well, she shoots him one more time as she runs kind of at the cage that she's in. Shoots him one more time, but then he... we have the scene where, the end of the scene where he just, yanks on the bars and
he pulls open the bars, but then he's he sees her scars from, I guess, where she's cut herself or something on her.
Or she's been hit or something
like that. And he's like, you're pure,
suffering or whatever, because that's his entire thing. Yeah. That's the Beast's entire thing.
It's the impure people that have
not suffered, yeah.
And so then he just walks off and leaves her. And then a janitor comes down because it turns out she's been living under a zoo, which is kind of where the Beast's personality developed, watching these animals and stuff.
Yeah.
Is what is implied. And this janitor comes down, finds her, lets her out, and she, I presume, just goes back to her uncle, which sucks for her.
Well, no, because if you notice at the end of the film, they let her know that her uncle has showed back up and she doesn't want to go with him, and she explains to the police officer that he's abused her.
She doesn't explain that.
She doesn't actually verbally explain it, but it's implied that she explains it.
Was it?
Yes.
I think it's you could leave it kind of ambiguous if she went back.
No, it's highly implied that she didn't go with him.
Shut up, Andrew. You're not supposed to be talking over there.
It's highly implied that she didn't go with him because of the way she acted and obviously, the situation they had been in. And then, obviously, since we've already seen Glass, she's she's with a foster family.
I don't think we talked about it in our Glass review.
She had turned in her uncle.
Yeah, so,
I guess you just didn't pick up on that.
Well, I didn't think that it was that heavily implied. I thought it could have been taken that she went back with him, too.
No.
Whatever. I think you're wrong, but whatever.
Well, no, because I got that the first time I watched it.
Well, I mean, it could have been taken that way, but whatever. Then we cut back to the Beast, which is now calling itself the Horde, or no, they haven't called it. He doesn't call it.
No, that's the last scene until we see Bruce Willis.
Yeah. So anyway, he cuts back, and it's like the
we cut to this diner scene.
Well, no. We cut back to the Beast, and it's like the three big personalities: Dennis, Patricia, and Hedwig talking to themselves, and they're like, "Well, the tales of the Beast are true, or whatever," and like, "We're invincible," blah blah. So then it cuts to credits, one credit split, and then it cuts to the diner.
And then we cut to this diner scene where we get this news story going on the TV, and you're like, all right, and it's about these girls getting kidnapped, and they find their bodies in the zoo, and how one of them has survived and escaped. And then we overhear these women talking to this diner counter about. That seems kind of similar, kind of seems like supernatural, kind of like that thing that happened, 15 years ago or whatever, 15, 16 years ago with that one guy, and they're like, well, what was his name? And then Bruce Willis is sitting right next to him, and he goes, Mr. Glass. And you're like, oh my god.
I was like, oh my god, I didn't get that until I read about it, but that's cool. But so I guess summarizing my thoughts, this is Shyamalan's second best movie. It's really good. I think it works as a horror movie, as a horror thriller movie, whatever you want to call it. I think it also kind of works as a character drama for Kevin Wendell Crumb and his multiple personalities. I think it works on both fronts. Also as a character drama for Anya Taylor-Joy's character, Casey, and how she's abused and how this has kind of, made her stronger and everything. And I even like the therapist in the movie. So, I like I said, really strong outing for Shyamalan. Really good rebound from a string of mediocre to terrible movies. I was hoping he would keep that streak running with Glass. We'll talk about what I think about that movie, or we did talk about in our review that we will release after this review because we're doing this all out of order. But overall, I think it's a really solid movie. If I had to give it a ranking, I'd probably give it 4 Bruce Willis cameos out of 5.
I agree with you. This is some of M. Night Shyamalan's, definitely some of M. Night Shyamalan's best work, obviously behind The Sixth Sense. I thoroughly enjoy this. It's definitely got the best performance out of any Shyamalan film made, and James McAvoy's character as Kevin Wendell Crumb and all these different, multiple personalities. He's exceptional in this, I believe. It's a very intriguing story. It works on so many different levels, and I think it was a really great twist at the end, adding Bruce Willis in. I'm sure it was probably an afterthought at the time.
Yeah.
But it's such a really good movie, and I was so impressed by it, especially the first time I saw it. I really enjoyed it. I'm also going to give it 4 out of 5. What do I want to give it 4 out of 5 of?
Bad written dialogue by Shyamalan.
I'm going to give it 4 out of 5 Shyamalan cameos.
Okay.
Since you did Bruce Willis cameos, why not?
All right.
Running out of Shyamalan-y things to put in my stars.
Shyamalan-y things. All right. Well, that concludes our review of Split.
Yep.
Look out for our Phantom Menace review next week, next week, whenever the episode comes out. Followed by the Phantom Menace review, followed by our Glass review. I hope to have all of these edited and out within
in a timely fashion.
6 months. 2 weeks or so.
Hopefully by the end of January.
Yeah. So we got more movies coming out. Can't get behind again. But anyway, I hope you enjoy our new format that we've got. It's our second episode, I believe, that we've done this new format. So hope it's working out better. I think from our standpoint, it's working out better.
Yeah.
I guess we go ahead and wrap this thing up. What do we got on social media happening?
Yeah, man. We're up on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We're at DNA Film Wars, all lowercase, no space on those. This year, one of our goals is to, try to get ourselves out there more. So we'll probably be trying to post more on our social media accounts. So keep a lookout for those posts. And give us a like or a follow. And, be sure to tell your friends about us. We enjoy what we do in here, so we want more people to listen to it.
Yeah, and as always, you can contact us with any specific comments and or questions at dnafilmwars@gmail.com. We are up on all major podcasting services. Please feel free to leave us a review.
We're also up on YouTube with our audio files, so if you don't listen to those podcasting services, you can find us there.
Yep, and so as always, I'm Aaron.
I'm Dylan. We'll catch you in the next one.
My name's Hedwig.
How old are you?
9?
I've never seen a case like this before. 23 identities live in Kevin's body. Who are you?
Help me get out of here, Hedwig.
You trying to trick me? I'll tell on you. Aren't you the clever one?
An individual with multiple personalities can change their body chemistry with their thoughts.
Someone's coming for you.
Who's coming?